Last week I said I was heading off into town straight away for the Heart and Soul event, part of the General Assembly week. And I thought this morning, at this point in the service, I might tell you a wee bit about some of the things that were going on at the General Assembly and give you a bit of an update on that. I have to say, I feel that it was one of the most interesting and certainly the most engaged General Assembly I've been at in recent years. I think the General Assembly found its teeth and it wasn't afraid to use them. I'll give you some highlights that stick out for me. You'll be aware that over many years, I think it's something like 13 years, we have almost annually had a debate about some aspect of human sexuality, and this year was no different. Each time we've had one of these debates, the Church has moved steadily in a more progressive direction, a more accepting and affirming direction. On Saturday last week, Saturday last week, someone proposed from the floor of the Assembly that the Legal Questions Committee should be asked to draft legislation which would, in time, if approved, give ministers of the Church of Scotland the right to conduct same-sex weddings, while also providing safeguards to those ministers who, in conscience, felt that they couldn't do those services. And that proposal to do that work was overwhelmingly accepted, and the committee sent away and asked to come back with proposed legislation in 2 years' time, in 2020, and we'll see what the discussion is at that time. Monday of the Assembly saw the presentation by the Council of Assembly of their strategic plan, which they produced in this lovely glossy brochure. I felt that the strategic plan contains a lot of good ideas. It speaks about promoting cooperation between congregations and churches. It spoke about making sure that the church is financially sustainable. It also speaks about developing and supporting ministry teams, seeing ministers working together as much more a feature of the future of the church than it has been of its past. It also spoke about the necessity to dispose of surplus buildings, recognising that the Church of Scotland has far too many buildings for the number of people that use them. And we also have quite a number of buildings which aren't really in the right places. They're stuck away where nobody now is living around them. And so it speaks about having well-equipped churches in the right kind of places to reach and serve communities. The problem, I think, was although it's called Strategic Plan 2018 to 2028, it's neither strategic nor a plan. The motion that was before the Assembly spoke of guiding principles, and I think it contains those, but it's not a plan. And so the Assembly felt that it didn't go far enough, nor indeed nearly fast enough, and it sent the committee away, the Council of Assembly, to bring back more radical proposals next year. Now, I don't know what radical means in this context. Will it mean, for example, a plan imposed from the central church for reducing to a certain number of buildings in a much shorter period of time than this speaks of? Will it talk about changing the way that congregations call ministers so that ministers can be more, could be directed to move to places where there aren't ministers? I don't know. But these would be more radical suggestions. So I think that whatever comes back will have to be looked at very carefully, because it will have a really big impact on congregations. For me, obviously, on Tuesday, the highlight was the presentation of the Ecumenical Relations Committee report. The convener one, Alison MacDonald, gave yet again an excellent speech, and I thought, I would think this, handled the questions that came expertly. The committee presented to the Assembly, and the Assembly accepted a new ecumenical policy. And the policy commits the Church of Scotland to a much more explicit self-understanding that it is but one part of the one Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. Often I think denominations see themselves as separate units, and we might, as the Church of Scotland, talk a bit to the Roman Catholic Church, but they're very separate from us, or the Scottish Episcopal Church, but they're very separate from us. But this policy says that that's not, in a sense, the right way to think. We think of ourselves as different expressions of the one church and bound together to each other. This is not new, of course, but it's been made clearer in the record, as it were, of the General Assembly. The policy, I think, also opens us up to being able to think a wee bit better about how we minister to the whole of Scotland. You're probably aware that the Church of Scotland has, for the last 450 years or so, tried very hard to maintain a presence in every community. It's what we call the territorial ministry of the Church. And so every square inch of Scotland is in a Church of Scotland parish, and the ideal is that there'll be a Church of Scotland minister who will be available to look after every single person who lives within that parish. And the reality is, we're no longer able to do that. We have routinely something like 200 vacancies, and that's under the current planning system, which will change in due course. There are congregations, particularly in the north, but some not so far north, which are vacant for 8, 10 years or more. And so the idea of us achieving territorial ministry is, well, questionable. But ecumenically, I think we can do more, because we can, if we are in agreement with other churches, we can say, well, let's share this. There are places where the Church of Scotland is stronger, there are places where the Free Church is stronger, there are places where the Scottish Episcopal Church is stronger, and others. And I think this policy that we have now opens up the possibility of doing that in a better, more open way. Also on Tuesday, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the decision made in May 1968 by the General Assembly that women should be eligible for ordination to the ministry of Word and Sacrament on exactly the same basis as men. And we had really rather a nice ceremony, in a sense. A number of ministers, women ministers of the Church of Scotland, walked up the mound and gathered in the quadrangle at New College. They were addressed, and many others were there in support as well, both women and men, addressed by Margaret Forrester, who was one of the pioneers, one of the people who brought the original overture to the General Assembly to ask it to agree that women may be ordained. There were also Katrina Morrison, and I can't remember her mother's name, I think it may have been Margaret. They were the first mother and daughter both to be ministers of the Church of Scotland. And then we moved into the Assembly Hall, and Margaret Forrester once again spoke, as did Jean Montgomery. Two very well-respected ministers spoke about the journey towards the ordination of women, and also highlighted, and I think this is really important, the fact that the work is not yet done. There is still, and I've said this before and several times, there is still discrimination against women within the church. And I think we saw that there were 3 women conveners speaking this week. I think it was just 3, and lost count of the number of men. And as the debates took place, I would regularly look around and see all men standing, the microphones ready to speak, and hardly any women. So there is work to be done, but it's still right and good to celebrate that significant anniversary. On Wednesday, the Church and Society Council reported, and among many other things in their report, they had a proposal that the Church of Scotland should disinvest from fossil fuel companies as a sign of our commitment to work for a low-carbon economy. Concerns about climate change were prominent within the debate. People were arguing that we should be making a prophetic witness that we have to move to a different form of economy and different forms of fuel for the good of the whole planet. Other people argued that holding investments in fossil fuel companies, in Shell, BP, and things like that, gave us influence within the annual general meetings, and we could, because we had a stake in them, we could argue with those companies. And I'm personally sorry to say that that argument prevailed, and the Assembly decided not to disinvest. It's one of those situations where I think that the argument will be had many times over a number of years. It's already been had a couple of times, and eventually the Church of Scotland will change its mind. It moves slowly. Thursday, there's lots of different things going on. We had the military chaplains in the morning, which is always, in a sense, quite an impressive occasion, and the Assembly was addressed by a General Bruce, who I thought gave a very good speech about the importance of military chaplaincy within all the services. Later on that day, a proposal was brought by the Presbytery of Melrose and Peebles for the Church to look again at the status of the Westminster Confession of Faith. Now, this might seem rather an arcane thing, but all ministers and all elders have signed up to it. And let's face it, how many of us have actually read it? It says some pretty hateful things about the Roman Catholic Church in particular. But it's a document that was written in the 1640s amid a very turbulent time when, unlike so many Reformed confessions of faith, it was written against something, and it was written against the attacks that were being made on Reformed theology and Presbyterian government. But it is our subordinate standard. It's what we're supposed to believe, and, well, I don't know how many of us actually do. So I think this is going to be an interesting discussion, and it will take some time to look at what really is appropriate for the church of the 21st century to be saying that it believes. Also on the Thursday, the Council of Assembly, they kept popping up at different times. They brought a proposal to set up a commission to look into the arrangements for pension trusteeship. Now, normally when we discuss pensions in the General Assembly, 3/4 go and get a cup of coffee and the others have a wee snooze. But not this year, because there was very clearly the feeling that the Council of Assembly were not being entirely transparent, and that there was some kind of hidden agenda going on. And this is what I mean about the Assembly finding its teeth. I've never seen a debate quite like this, where a committee was bringing something which was fairly indefensible, defended it as best they could, but in the end, when a vote was taken, not one single person stood up, not even a member of the Council of Assembly stood up to support their own motion. And so it fell. And the reason why I think this is important is that the Council of Assembly is the body within the church at the moment which has this kind of overarching view of the entire work of the church in the sort of central committees and bodies, the General Assembly and all the councils that report to it. It also, it has the strategic function, it has the budget function, it looks after all the finances. It's an immensely powerful committee. And yet I think it came out of this assembly seriously damaged. And that has implications for how it can do its work in the future. And I think that there may be discussions. I know there are people plotting, but I think there may be discussions about the role and function of the Council Assembly and how the church situates those functions that it has in a better, clearer, more effective way. The General Assembly also makes appointments, and I want to speak about two of them. Every year it elects a committee to nominate the moderator who will serve next year. So as soon as we install one moderator, we're thinking about her or his successor. And I'm really pleased that our own Margaret Hood was elected to the committee, and Margaret will be helping to choose the moderator who will serve in 2019 General Assembly and into 2020. So all the best with that, Margaret. We look forward to hearing all the gossip, but you'll be sworn to secrecy. So all the best with that. Friday morning, on Friday morning, the Nominations Committee reported, and the Nominations Committee is the group that appoints people to all the different councils and committees to serve as conveners and members of those committees. So it's an important job that it does, and there's always a rotation of people, so there are new people coming in every year and other people retiring each year. And after 5 years as convener of the Ecumenical Relations Committee, my wife Alison came to the end of her term. She actually came to the end of her term last year, but was asked to serve an extra year for various reasons to see us through changes in staff within the committee. And the Nominations Committee, after a process that the Ecumenical Relations Committee had gone through, nominated me as her successor, and the Assembly has appointed me as such. And I think, in a way, this is a kind of historic moment in a very, very tiny way, that it's the first time that a convenership has passed from one spouse to another. I'm quite thrilled, to be honest. I'm very excited about taking up this work. I've been on the committee since, in one form or another, since 1999, so I know quite a bit about it. It's going to be a fun committee to convene. I think there are some really good people on the committee at the moment, and largely, I have to say, thanks to Alison's leadership over the last 5 years, the role of the committee and the respect in which it is held within the church has expanded and risen. And so this is a really good time to come into it, but I have big shoes to fill indeed. There will be quite a lot of meetings, and there'll be a lot of discussions, there'll be some conferences to attend and to speak at, and there'll be a bit of travel. Alison's done more of that than I expect to do, because she's had more in the way of European commitments than I will have. She hopefully will be keeping that on. So I'm taking it on, as I say, with a mixture of real excitement, a real sense of the honour that has been done to me, and I have to say, some trepidation. I'm looking forward to convening the committee. I'm not looking forward to answering questions in the General Assembly, but I'll have to do that. The role of the committee is to build and maintain the relationships between the Church of Scotland and other churches, principally in Scotland, the UK, and in Ireland, and with the ecumenical bodies of which we are a part. And all of this naturally takes takes time because relationship building is never an instant process. All conveners of General Assembly committees and councils who are parish ministers are given some support in doing their work as conveners in the form of a budget to pay for pastoral assistance. And I'm really pleased that the Reverend John Tate, who's a retired minister from Edinburgh, not a terribly long retired minister, and he's been working with Alison for the last number of years doing this kind of work with her. He's agreed. In fact, he said to her, "I'm going to really miss this. You don't happen to know who your successor is going to be?" And she said, "Well, actually." And he said, "Somebody in the same presbytery?" She said, "No, somebody in the same house." So John has agreed to do that work. He'll do some pastoral work. He'll probably do some funerals if there are at a time that I can't do it, and he'll take some services on those occasions when I have to be away on committee business. And John will be with us on the 17th of June. He's currently, even at this moment, being thanked for his service at North Esk, but he's taking a couple of weeks off, and then he'll come and he'll see us and meet us all on the 17th of June. And I'm sure you'll like him and will appreciate and benefit from his ministry among us. Finally, and I've probably spoken longer than I should, but I promise you the sermon is really short today. I wouldn't want to finish what I've said without saying a word of appreciation about our moderator this year, Susan Brown, who is the minister of Dornoch Cathedral. And I have to say, I think that she did an absolutely first-class job. She moderated the General Assembly with great grace, with good humour, and with firmness when it was needed. She's a refreshingly unstuffy person, and she brought to the Assembly a steady hand when it was facing some rocky times. And I know that she will be a great ambassador for our Church of Scotland over the coming year as she travels around and visits many people, different presbyteries, different churches, different countries, and gets involved in all sorts of things. I think she'll be a moderator who makes us all in the Church of Scotland proud.